Then please move to the next slide.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. So before we begin, I'll introduce myself first. My name is Evangeline Aitwala. You may know me by my interaction with some of you in the past few months. I'm the Alumni Engagement Officer at the CSE, and on behalf of the CSE team, I welcome you all to this webinar. Today's topic is on Pakistan's journey, clean and green energy transition, the challenges and way forward. This webinar is part of the CSE's Climate Action webinar series. Presenting this webinar today, we have with us Commonwealth alumnus Mohammad Faisal Sharif from Pakistan. Hello, Faisal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
He's currently the Director for Projects Appraisal at Private Power and Infrastructure Board, Ministry of Energy, the Power Division with the Government of Pakistan. Faisal has 17 years of professional experience in the energy sector, both in private and public sector organizations. I'm pleased to say that Faisal is a 2015 Commonwealth Shared Scholar from Pakistan. He completed his MSc in New and Renewable Energy at Durham University. And I will now leave the floor open to Faisal to present, but most importantly, welcome Faisal. Thank you so much for presenting your topic today.
Thank you so much, Evangeline, for such a wonderful introduction. And I'm really grateful for your time and support throughout the time since the announcement of these webinar series in Climate Connection, COP26, I think from June this year. And I must say that this also gave me an opportunity to know that how much efforts you and your CSE team put in just arranging a one webinar. So that's something I feel really proud about Commonwealth Scholarship Commission, that I belong to such a prestigious scholarship program, which cares so much about the professional developments of its alumni. And secondly, I would also like to thank CSE for giving me this opportunity to share my views on Pakistan clean energy transition with CSE global community. It's indeed a pleasure. Thank you everyone for being here, and very good evening. Starting from the outline of the presentation, I'll just give a brief background on my Commonwealth Scholarship journey. Then, because it's a time when UK is hosting Conference of Party 26, so we will just touch the main goals of this COP26. Then I'll cover United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the global overview on transition towards low carbon economy. And particularly, I'll discuss the case of Pakistan energy and environment sector to achieve the objectives of low carbon economy and a transition towards clean and green energy, the challenges we are facing in this journey, and the possible way forward. And finally, I'll discuss my involvement and contribution in this clean and green energy transition, market transformation, and overall energy sector issues. And in the end, of course, we'll conclude the presentation. So let's move. Background. Yeah, it was year 2014-15, and at that time I was working as a manager projects at PPIB, which is my current organization as well. And I have extensive involvement in policy and regulatory affairs, project developments, and overall energy sector reforms. At that time, I had a qualification in engineering, MBA, and energy management, with overall almost 10 years of experience. So at that time, globally, the renewable energy started picking pace, and Pakistan was also about to start its journey towards renewable energy. The country had already started implementation of few of the small-scale renewable energy projects, and there was a serious thinking that the massive reforms are required in the energy sector to achieve the sustainability and affordability in the sector. So that was the time when, as a student of energy, I really felt that I should align my knowledge with the best international practices if I want to have effective contribution in this whole reform process. So I started exploring the courses in various international universities. Meanwhile, I came across the announcement of one of the most prestigious international scholarship, that is a Commonwealth Scholarship, a very flagship program of United Kingdom government for MSc New and Renewable Energy at Durham University, which is one of the oldest collegiate university of the UK. So it was really a well-designed course, maintained very good balance between the energy and the markets and the environment policies. So that really attracted me. So I applied for it, and of course, it was not an easy journey because it's a very competitive process, and Commonwealth picked some of the best across the world. So chances were minute, but I applied, and somehow, luckily, I got it, and that was, of course, a very exciting moments of life. And I got final email from the commission, and then started MSc in September 2015 at School of Engineering, Durham. And no doubt, I must say that it was a very conducive environment and very learned faculty members, where while studying, carrying out various research projects, it not only enhanced my knowledge and exposure on renewable energy markets, but it also boost my research aptitude while doing some group design projects, some research projects, because it was an MSc which was 50% research based and was carried out in very close collaboration with industry. So these are the distinct features of this program, which particularly enhance some of the soft skills as well. Further, Commonwealth provided very good opportunity of networking with the international scholarly community, and especially the welcome event was very great, where the relationship built at that time even are alive today, and we keep on sharing knowledge and information, and that is great. That have a very positive and great impact on your professional and personal development, I think so. And finally, of course, while stay at Durham and connected with Houston of College, it was an opportunity to know about British culture and their values and the networking. So overall, it was an amazing experience, which not only provided me a advanced education, but of course, an international exposure on the international energy markets and policy sides, besides some personal and socializing activities. So in September 2016, I came back to Pakistan and I rejoined my previous position, manager project at PPIB. Immediately after my return, I was placed to work with managing director, though it was unprecedented attachment because there was 2 tiers in between, and while being a manager, I was working with MD. So it overall enhanced my involvement in overall energy sector affairs, including policy and strategy formulations, various plans, projects monitoring, and implementation, some sectoral reforms, market energy transition, various international energy conferences and dialogues with various countries on bilateral cooperations, and then coordination with multilaterals like World Bank, Asian Development Banks, these institutions on some technical assistance program for the improvement of power sector. So it gave really a good exposure. And of course, it transformed my career. It gave some confidence, and it gives me opportunity to apply my knowledge, which I have gained from Durham University, the latest and advanced one on the renewable energy. So now come little closer to today's topic. So the United Kingdom is hosting Conference of Party 26 in Glasgow, November this year. So it's bringing parties together to negotiate on the agenda and to achieve the goals of Paris agreements. So the main four goals of COP26 is to secure global net zero by mid of this century, to keep temperature 1.5 degree within the reach, and then adopt some protect communities and nature habitats to restore the ecosystem and world biodiversity while working together. Finally, and then of course the climate finance is one of the major, because without financing you cannot achieve the targets. The promised 100 billion finance is still to be was committed, but still to be spent, not fully fulfilled. So, and finally, of course, it all requires a global collaboration. If all work together, then these goals, shared goals, can be achieved. So if we look at the world emissions, this is the latest available from Climate Watchdog website. So this is, I think, figure for 2016, but not very much different for the current years. The world emits roughly each year 50 billion ton of GHG emissions. And if you look at the graph, so 5 countries emit half of it, mean 24.3 by 5 countries: China, US, India, Russia, and Japan. So they are the major contributor in GHG emissions. So basically, it's a point where they have to decide some decisions based on the rationality and fairness, that how they can pay back to this planet to restore its ecosystem and to achieve the net zero target by mid of this century. Sorry. And then what are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? These are basically a blueprint of different interlinked goals for the better and sustainable development of the world. And these were announced by General Assembly in 2015. And these are our target is to achieve them by 2030. Since we will be mostly talking about the energy, so I'll focus on UN SDG 7, that is ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And of course, energy is an engine of economic growth, and it's most crucial even to achieve other interlinked sustainable development goals. Even as of latest report of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2021, 1/3 of population still rely on very dangerous and inefficient cooking system, and 759 million people lack access to electricity. So if we have to achieve the targets by 2030, the uniform access of energy, then it requires the high share of renewable and clean energy, and particularly in transportation and heating sector. So it's a very ambitious targets, and a very collaborative approach is required to achieve these targets. So what is the transition economic overall global view on transition of a global economy? So to meet the objectives of Paris agreements and United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and by the way, energy is the largest source of GHG emissions. Normally 75%, usually 75% emissions are from the energy end use, and heating is one of the again major source within the energy sector. So clean energy transition and decarbonized heating are the most crucial to achieve the set targets. And when we talk about moving towards low carbon economy, there are multifaceted challenge, because on the one side you have to balance the economic growth, and on the others, and for that you need more energy, but with the less carbon emissions. So it's a challenging, of course, it's a trade-off. You require more energy, but with less emissions, mean the clean energy. And of course, that requires a financing, and that requires other technology interventions. So it's a long-term goal for a country to minimize our global warming. It's a distinct economic package, how they can achieve these targets. And this vary from country to country, because each country have different peculiar economic and technical issues, particularly the developing countries. So Pakistan is at the moment, Pakistan is undergoing two major transformations. The one is a clean energy transition, where we are targeting 60% of renewables, mainly from wind, solar, and hydro by 2030. That is a very ambitious target. And secondly, we are restructuring, we are transforming our electricity sector from current single buyer model towards a multi-buyer models. It's a major transformation, and we are leading towards the development of wholesale electricity market, where electricity can be traded like a commodity. So these two major transformation have put some complex and some real challenges for the policymakers and for the decision makers. And particularly it's challenging for Pakistan being a developing country, because of course there's a number of macroeconomic issues, the market compatibility of various fuels and renewable energy technologies, and then electricity infrastructure, that we need a very robust transmission and distribution infrastructure to accommodate, to integrate the higher share of variable renewable energy and our energy mix. So we will discuss the challenges in detail in later slides, but this is just an overview. So because we have audience, we have friends from different countries, so I think it will be good if I give some key figures about the country. Pakistan is located in South Asia, sixth largest populated country, with 215 million of population, with area of 800,000 kilometers square. It's a lower middle income country with per capita income of around 1550. And the energy supply for 21 was 85 million ton of oil equivalents. Electricity generation was around 40 gigawatts. Electricity capacity was 40 gigawatts, and electricity generation, which we actually consume basically, that was 131 terawatt hour. The per capita electricity consumption is not very high. It's I think in low range. It's in 516 for year 2020. But the positive thing is the country has a huge indigenous and renewable energy potential. We have hydropower potential of 60 gigawatts, and we have wind potential of 340 gigawatts, and solar 2900 gigawatts. So that's a huge potential, but of course we have to exploit all this potential, because right now at the moment we have very low share of renewable wind and solar 5% and hydro 26-27%. So this is just a flow diagram of electricity sectors, that how we generate electricity. We generate electricity from different sources, from hydro, from from nuclear, mainly from thermal fuels, gas, LNG, then come coal, and some variable renewable from wind and solar. And then this generated electricity is transmitted from high voltage transmission line and towards a distribution system. And finally, the distribution companies, which are interface of the sector with the consumer, they supply electricity to end consumer. This is relatively a lower voltage level where the on which electricity is distributed to end consumers. So this is the energy fuel mix as of today. So you can see that as of today, we have dominated fuel mix by the thermal fuels, 69%, including gas, nuclear, imported coal, and 13%, and oil. Then 26% is hydro, and 4-5% is wind and solar. So as of today, we have major share of thermal fuels, and that's what I'll show you in the next slides, that how we are moving away from these fossil fuels and how we are going to increase the share of hydro and other renewable energy in our energy mix by 2030. So I'll also like to give you very brief background of Pakistan power sector, electricity sector, that how it's evolved as it is today. Earlier, there were two vertical integrated utilities. So these vertical integrated utilities mean that they were responsible to generate electricity, to transmit, and to distribute electricity to end consumer. So they were responsible for whole value chain of electricity. And we had two VIUs, WABDA, which was responsible to supply electricity to whole country except the metropolitan city of Karachi, which is the largest city of Pakistan, where KSC, now that company is K Electric, and that is still a utility which supplies electricity to Karachi and its adjacent areas. And then in 92, WABDA strategic plan, WABDA was unbundled into different generation, transmission, and distribution companies. The purpose was to bring efficiency, competition, and capital formation, the private sector investments to build new power projects, because there was the government and the public sector was not able to finance mega projects. So it was time when with the help of World Bank, this plan was prepared, and purpose was to attract a private sector investment. So accordingly, the PPIB, which is my organization, that was created in 94 to promote, encourage, and safeguard investment in the sector. And then the regulator NEPRA, which was responsible to oversee all this unbundling process, was created in 97 and to regulate the sector, generation, transmission, and distribution. Currently, we are in single buyer model. We are not monopoly now. We are single buyer, that there's one central power purchasing agency which purchase power from all the generators and then supply to the distribution companies for onwards supply to consumers. So the ultimate objective of these reform was to liberalize and open market to bring efficiency, competition, and of course transparency in the sector. And these reforms are still in process. We were somehow the process was halted sometime, but now it's again revived after 2014, 2015, and currently we are moving towards development of market. So PPIB since its creation has implemented various government policies, 94, 95, transmission line policies, and remained successful in attracting some leading investors, global investors, lenders, multilaterals, companies in power sector. So PPIB has so far inducted 40 power projects of around 18 gigawatts with investment of $20 billion. And recently, we have also developed one transmission line of 900 kilometer long, 4 gigawatt capacity. And this is HVDC, first ever HVDC. This is technology in Pakistan. So around 70% of electricity is supplied to national grid by these IPPs. So you can see the share of projects which have been operationalized through facilitation of PPIB, that they are supplying up to 70% of electricity to national grid. And beside these commissioned projects, we have currently 22 projects of 12 gigawatts which are under development. So now we move towards the environment side. So the per capita GHG emission, you can see that Pakistan is amongst the lowest. Pakistan has 2.07 per capita GHG emissions overall, and for energy sector is 0.99, and the highest is from US. This is 17.74, and even if we compare it with other neighboring countries like India and Turkey, so we are multiple time lower than these countries. So we had just 1% share in the GHG emissions. So we are not the polluters. We have very low share in overall GHG emissions, global GHG emissions. Even then, we are committed towards transition towards clean and green energy. By the way, on previous slide, we have just a very low share of coal in our generation mix. We have, at the moment, we have just 12% share in our generation mix of coal. And these coal plants all are built in well compliance with the international environmental standards. So this is overall figure for GHG emissions for 2018, and 2018 it was 438. So if we talk about 50 billion, it's even less than 1%. And of course, the major contribution is from energy sector. Almost half is from energy sector, followed by agriculture, 42%, industries, 6%, waste, and then land use and change in forestry, 2%. So this is per capita carbon emissions. So carbon emissions, again, it's 1.01, very low in comparison to developed countries and neighboring countries. So now we come towards the green and green policies of Pakistan. So recently the government has announced a nation equity policy, which is very strong focus on indigenization and environment. So the objective is to achieve sustainability in electricity sector and to provide affordable and reliable electricity to all by 2030, of course, well in line with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So the key principle of this 2021 nation security policy are based on the efficiency, transparency, competition, where that's why we are creating a market where there'll be a more competition between the parties, the financial viability, indigenization. We will be more depending upon our own resources instead of depending upon imported fuels and imported equipments. And then environment responsibility. So this is one of the key features of nation security policy. Based on this, these key principles, the sectoral policy framework for individually for generation, transmission, distribution will be finalized. And beside nation security plan will also be finalized, keeping the strategic goals of this policy. So a lot of work ongoing on reforms and policy sides. The purpose is only one: to achieve sustainability in electricity supplies and to promote competition, indigenization, and environment friendly fuels and resources in our generation mix. So recently, since COP26 is very near, so recently the government has announced its updated national determination contributions 2021. So we are targeting 50% reduction in our carbon emissions by 2030. Of course, 15% is unconditional, which we can meet from our own resources, but 35% where we will have to get support from international financial institutions. And of course, sorry. And just for a clean energy transition, as per NDC, the requirement is $101 billion by 2030. So this is a huge amount. Of course, we cannot meet it through our national budgetary resources. We need financial assistance from international financial institutions as well. Then, of course, we are moving toward also exploiting the blue carbon economy, and then our policies are very much aligned with the environment and clean and green energy. We are targeting 60% of renewable energy by 2030. Besides, we recently the government has announced electricity vehicle policy targeting 30% of electricity vehicle by 2030. It's carry strong and fiscal and tax incentives to promote and encourage the usage of electricity vehicles. And then, of course, some other initiatives, including the under Prime Minister 10 billion tree tsunami, which is worldwide being placed, has been launched, mass scale plantation across the country, and adaptation measures are being taken. So number of initiatives on environment sides have been initiated to achieve the targets. So this is the fuel mix, how we see 2030. So if you remember in earlier slide 2021, the main dominating fuels were thermal fuels, 69% share, but here we have the renewable energy, 62%, which mainly includes hydro 39%, and then wind 8%, and solar 13%. So 62% renewable energy, and remaining 38% will be of gas and oil, nuclear. So even out of that 38%, the gas 15%, the nuclear 6%, and these are very clean, relatively clean fuel. So don't have issues with the emissions. Actually, coal is just 8%, and local coal 6%. So this is a comparison that how we are today and how the generation mix will be in 2030. So almost 64% increase in generation capacity, 37. I have talked that we have a 40 gigawatts of capacity. Here I am showing 37. 40 gigawatt actually here 30. This 37 does not include the 2,000, 3,000 megawatts of being supplied by KL Electric, because that is a separate entity that is, I'm talking about a nation grid. So 37, it will, from 37 it will be up to 61, almost 64% increase. And you can see that in the imported fuels, there's dip in imported coal, 3% dip. Then local coal will go up by 4%, but gas will down by 15%, nuclear by 1%. And then you can see a significant increase in solar 12%, hydropower price 12%, and wind 5%. So this is how the transition look like in the clean energy, how we are moving away from fossil fuels, and how we are increasing the share of clean and green energy in 2030. So this is a capacity, basically. This is the installed capacity. So next slide, I'll be talking about the electricity generation. So this capacity, how much electricity will be generated? So overall, we almost 59% more generation than of 2021. In 2021, we generated 130 terawatt hour, and for year 2030, it will be estimated as 207 terawatt hours. So again, there's a clear-cut reduction in imported coal, 9%, and then of course gas and fine 3% from 33 to 3%. And increase in nuclear, in renewable energy, solar 8%, wind 12% from, and then 8%, and hydro 46% from 30%. So these are electricity generation percentages in overall electricity basket by 2030. So before going towards challenges, I think first I would like to give some overview that what strength we have in Pakistan power sector. Since we started reform process in early 90s, so as of today, we have a number of international players in power sector who have participated in development sector, whether it's investments, whether it's operation and maintenance, whether it's equipment supply. So we have renowned international investors, lenders. All big names are in Pakistan, the technology giants like the Siemens, the General Electric, and the contractors, EPC. So all, most of the renowned players are working in Pakistan power sector. They're already here, so they have trusted on our policies and frameworks. Then we have, in our generation, we have different technologies, starting from combined cycle gas turbine, steam turbine, nuclear plants, renewable energy technologies, wind and solar, hydro turbines. And similarly, in fuel mix, we have all kinds of fuels, starting from oil, gas, coal, nuclear, hydro on natural resources side, wind and solar. So that is something which is, I think, a strength of the sector. And if we look at 2030 numbers, We have currently 60% indigenous share in our electricity generation, and it is going to increase to 91% by 2030. Of course, that will contribute towards the energy security of the country. So that's very encouraging. And with all the measures I have told you in the previous slides, the Pakistan's carbon emissions from power sector is standing at 356 gram per kWh, which will be further reduced to 198, which will be lower than many of the OECD countries. And as of today, we are lower than the world average, which is 475. So it's something positive about the sector, that we are environmentally sustainable power sector. We have a presence, we have a huge indigenous and renewable potential. We have discussed in the previous slides. And then, of course, the policy and regulatory framework is very simplified and very well trusted and tested by the international players. And then institution reputations like PPIB, NEPRA, all these institutions have been working for last 25, 26 years with the international electricity sector community, in whether they are international banks, they are investors, they are technology companies. So they have a good working relationship, as well as a very well they have a confidence on these institutions. So what are the challenges basically? So if we 60% share of renewable energy by 2030 is, of course, itself a challenge, because it's a very ambitious and aggressive target. And I think I can say it with confidence that it is might be the highest target set by any of the developing country. So its credit goes to, of course, the government, that they have set ambitious targets and they are very committed to achieve it. And then obviously, since we are moving towards we are undertaking two transformation: energy transformation and the market transformation. So overall impact of these transformation, or risk and returns of the new investment, that will be important to look at, because attracting investment under new market dynamics will, of course, will be a challenging. We have long-term power purchase agreements with the IPPs. So when we have long-term power purchase agreements and we have some committed projects, so the issue is that we have limited space for the competition for the new projects, because when you have already power plants in your basket with the under long-term agreements, so there's a limited space for competition. And for only on electricity side, we require $40 billion of NPV investment by 2030 against new capacity addition. This is in addition to payments to existing IPPs and committed projects. So of course that's a challenging, and corresponding investment is required in the transmission and distribution sector for grid stability and strengthening, multi-billion-dollar, because when you increase the share of renewable, you require more robust and more stable grid and transmission infrastructure. And last but not least, the institution strengthening of key stakeholders, because all the stakeholders, all the organization, all the public sector companies which are undertaking these various assignments leading towards a transition, they require their capacity building for the new dynamics, for the new circumstances, to undertake projects under new term and conditions of the market. So there are challenges, but of course there are way forwards, and the good thing is that the policy makers and the government is well aware and well cognizant with the issues of with all these issues, and they are working on it. We have recently finalized the indicative generation capacity expansion plan, which gives a firm demand supply projection of electricity during the next 10 years. Electricity plan is under preparation, which will set a strategic objectives that how we will achieve the policy goals, and then the different policy frameworks for subsectors like generation, transmission, distribution will be prepared. So it will further narrow down the targets. Then a transmission system expansion plan, that how much expansion in transmission system is required, that is under preparation. And in parallel, restructuring of organizations, various new organizations are being constituted, being created, and the capacity building of existing organizations are underway with different training programs. And there's a work ongoing on project risk identification and how these risks can be allocated to the parties in a new market. And smart technology interventions, of course, this is very important because on when we will have an increasing share of renewable, then we will be working on smart grid, smart meters, and to control the demand of the consumer as well, and to manage the supply side as well. Forecasting tools, because there is intermittency in renewable energy technology, so so the forecasting tools are under consideration. And then there's also significant work on distribution sides, that off-grid solutions, the net metering, the solar, rooftop solars, and then some demand side management measures are being taken, because we have a potential of 10 to 15 percent saving of energy uh, through suggested demand side measurements. So these all the plans and all the initiatives are under process, and somehow being performed by the relevant entities to cope up with the challenges. So my involvement. So just I want to let you know that the it's somehow number of government entities are responsible, who are taking different assignments in this transition. And it's not like academic projects where one or two small teams take the projects, but it's a multi-billion dollars transitions. So my organization, since I am involved, I'm working with one of the most important and central organization. So there I am a member of market implementation group, which is working to complete multi-dimensional assignments, including formulation of policy frameworks, new contracts, and market rules. So I have a very extensive involvement in all these issues to complete these assignments, to enable the market to start its operation by April 21 this next year. Then I was involved in the consultative process of alternative energy, renewable energy policy 2019 and national study policy 2021. And of course, I must say that the education from Durham was very helpful while working on renewable energy policy, because at Durham I taken some of the courses on policy side, some research activities, which provided me very good insight on the various policy support mechanism being adopted by the countries to deploy renewable energy. So that was very useful. Then while working with top tier leadership, I have been extensive involvement in monitoring of our ongoing projects. These are multi-billion dollar projects of renewable and conventional energy projects. And I have involvement in various plans, like indicative generation capacity expansion plan, which have been formulated, and then sustainable energy for all. This was prepared by Planning Commission of Pakistan in collaboration with UNDP, and then integrated energy planning collaboration with US Department of Energy. So here I represented PPIB as a focal person. So I gave my input based on my knowledge and experience. And then of course I have very close collaboration with international agencies on various studies. Like recently the World Bank has carried out a renewable energy integration and planning study for Pakistan, and the number of technical assistance program for the improvement, performance improvement, and financial sustainable delivery services in electricity sector. So all these are the activities where I have extensive involvement. And I'm in very close collaboration with academia and research and policy think tanks. I have been I have volunteered myself as a member advisory board of US Pakistan Advanced Center for Energy of National University of Science and Technology. So have involvement in their course design, laboratory setup, and collaboration with industry and other research activities. Then and recently I have worked with Sustainable Development Policy Institutes, where we have launched a study on Pakistan green economic recovery from COVID-19 energy outlook. And then recently I have extensive involvement with Durham Energy Institutes on their campaigns regarding decarbonizing for COP26. And so these are some of the activities. Besides, I must give credit to Commonwealth, because before going on Commonwealth, I was not really very much active in volunteer assignments, but now I'm working on number of volunteer assignments. In last year during COVID-19, I participated as a mentor in the mentorship program of Pakistan US Mission and Pakistan US Lebanon Network. And I am pleased to share that I mentor a young engineer, helping him to start his career in the energy sector. So these are some youth-led initiatives. And then, of course, a number of conferences and seminars I used to go and share my experience and knowledge on the energy sector. So this is something where you want to share your experience, insight, and knowledge with the audience, and to build a capacity of the young generation. So these are some of the activities. So despite the challenges of and Pakistan is a country with very low carbon emissions, even then the country is very committed towards clean and green energy. We are not main polluter, but we are a responsible nation, and we are heading towards clean and green energy. But why? But we are also very careful about the financial sustainability and energy security of the country. And then at COP26, because it's a time for, I think it's a time for world leaders that they should commit some action based on the principle of rationality. They should commit certain action to pay back to this planet based on the shares of GHG, because they have some higher shares, and provide technical levels policies level support to low income countries, enabling them to contribute in this transition to build a better and green world for the coming generations. And finally, last but not least, I must say that Commonwealth Scholarship Commission has been playing a very crucial role by providing a quality education from top-ranked universities to scholars from developing countries, where they get education from these universities, they come back to their countries and they contribute in development needs. So just at the end, I would also like to request to all the alumni that please do your best, whatever you can do for your community, for your countries, for your region, because this is what the scholarship commission expects from us. So that's a very genuine expectation. So we should do whatever we can do. We should do it with passion. So that's all from my side. Now I give floor to Evangeline to start question answer session, please.
Great, thank you so much, Faisal. That was a really informative session, personally for me as well, and it really gave great insights on your expertise within the clean and green energy sector in Pakistan. But I also really enjoyed the concluding remarks on the importance of Commonwealth scholarship and the need for Commonwealth scholars and alumni to think about development impact and how they can contribute to that in their home countries. So thank you so much for making that point. I would now love to open the Q&A session. Attendees, if you have any questions for our speaker, please feel free to share that in the chat box. I will ask you to unmute yourself if you feel comfortable. If not, I'm more than happy to ask your questions on your behalf to the speaker. We do have a few questions, Faisal. When you're ready, I would like to bring that forward to you. A few questions?
Yeah, please, you can carry on. I'm ready.
All right, I'm just gonna spotlight you for a minute. Okay, great. So the first question for you is, how can the clean and green energy systems be sustained?
Yeah, this is now it's not something new, because the number of countries, the developed countries like German, UK, so they have very high share of renewable energy. So only thing you need is a very robust and advanced transmission grid system. So if you have a strong grid system, you can sustain the intermittency of these variable resources. And second thing is you need a forecasting techniques. So there are forecasting techniques where you can forecast well ahead, well in advance about the wind speed, about the solar, about the hydrology data. So all these things give you good insight to operate these technologies within their technical limits and in sustainable and reliable manners. And they are supplying very reliable. Even some of the countries are using these as their baseload plants. So baseload, just for the people who, I just want to share that what is a baseload plants are those which can operate for 24/7. Like we say that coal-based plants are the gas-based plants. They're the plants which are controllable, which we can control, which whenever we want, we can operate these plants. Whenever we want, we can close it. But in case of renewable, of course, there is some issue with the controllability of these resources, because these are the nature resources. Wind is not in our control. Sun is not in our control. But even then, with the proper forecasting, with better transmission and grid infrastructure, we can come across these issues, and these are very well sustainable resources.
Thank you so much for your response. I do see a hand raised. Is that Roland? Roland, would you like to unmute yourself to ask your question?
Yes, yes. Okay, so Roland. I'm from Ghana, but currently studying environmental change and management at University of Oxford.
Great.
Okay, so I have two questions or three.
Please.
It's still concerning the sustainability, because people are also arguing that in terms of transitioning from the fossil fuel to the clean energy, which is wind, solar, and then the others. People are saying that it's like we are just transforming the problem from one form to another, because we also have to extract metals. Because solar, you use metals, and then we use lithium too. So that is going to bring another environmental challenge. Another reason is, I don't know whether we know how long it will take if we are going to be using the solar, extracting the metals for the lithium, the uraniums, and because we will also be using nuclear. How long it will last, and then the quantities, because we are comparing that to the fossil fuels, because the fossil fuels were able to take us for like close to 200 years. And then we still have a lot underground. So people also have concerns about that. My second question is, a country like Ghana, they invested a lot into thermal plants. And Ghana is a middle developing country, and migrating to renewable energies, it's not easy to convert those plants into renewable energy. Though there's commitment, there's something like carbon pricing for the developed countries to help the developing countries, but there's no legal binding for that particular deal. So, I would just like your opinion on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think your questions are very valid, particularly from developing country point of view, because this is something which I really speak on all the forums, that we have very different issues as compared to developed country. When they push you that you have to increase your renewable and clean energy resources, so then you come up with your own particular issues, that we have to first come across these issues, then we can move towards the transition. Your first question, what I understand, that you say that even in solar and in even nuclear there are some emissions. That is something, of course, but that is that we cannot compare with the fossil fuels, because because during they have the emissions during the manufacturing process, during the transportation of equipment, during construction and commissioning, and then again during decommissioning, but not during the operation, of course. Other environment issues are there, of course, but not the emissions issue, because what emissions are created from coal or from other fossil fuels that are not from wind and solar. Of course, these are the clean and clean resources. But yes, and the second part of your question is regarding we have the same issue like in Pakistan. We started privatization, involvement of private sector in 1994, and we remained very successful. We were pioneers in the sector, in the region, and we attracted some good investors and investments from private sectors, from international investors. And we are still relying on thermal fuels. And even of today, we have a major share of thermal fuels, but very low carbon emissions from power sector, less than the world average. Despite of these issues, because the environment is, the climate change is changing fast, and even if we reduce the carbon emission, even then we will have to take some years to sustain for the future years. So in backdrop of all these events, COP26, this is basically the event where there should be consensus that how the developed world take side by side the developing countries in this transition journey through their financial assistance programs through technical support, through capacity building of their human resource. So it's not something which is which a country can, especially a low income country or a developing country, can do at its own. Uh, uh, so they need support from international community. I think so. This is what I understand from your question. If you think that I should respond you further, you can email me. You can contact me via LinkedIn, so we can further discuss it in detail, because it's something of great interest to me as well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much, Faisal, and thank you, Roland, for asking your question. We have another question that's come in the chat box. The question is on your experience working with, the Ministry of Power or Energy in Pakistan. How do you manage getting data, or what has your experience been in terms of working with data?
No, of course we have in power sector under Ministry of Power, we are working under administrative control of Power Division, and there are a number of other departments. Like if you need data from a specific power plant, then of course you can request them, and then we have some centralized data books, like our regulator, which is a National Electric Power Regulatory Authority. They publish each year state of industry report. So it contains a very comprehensive data of each and every plant, the transmission system as well as distribution system. It contains the data about transmission losses, distribution losses, and the generation numbers of each plant, their efficiencies, their performance indicators, and the issues. So that's very comprehensive publication by the regulator. And then we have Energy Year book published by Ministry of Petroleum. The second, actually Ministry of Energy have two divisions. The one is Power Division, which deals with the electricity sector, and the other is the Petroleum Division, which deals with the fuels and other mineral resources. So that Energy Year book also contain data related to fuels, gas, coal, also related to electricity. So besides these two publications, we have our own, since we are working with the IPPs, the independent power producers, we have direct, sometime we can get data if we require from any specific plant, we can request them. So these are the resources of data. So I think we get data, what kind of, whenever we need it. It depends that what kind of data you need and what kind of analysis you are going to undertake, and what is the main objective of that analysis or study. So it's not difficult. I think it's manageable.
Thank you for sharing your response on that. Our next question is, in planning for the energy mix, are there political interference on the priority of which ones to implement ahead of the others?
Yeah, it's very a good question. I think it's a very relevant question, because it's not here in Pakistan. It's across the world basically, because the political government, but obviously the political government sometimes as of today, the government has very strong focus on building dams. So dam have a very long gestation periods. So if you want to build a dam, it requires 8 to 10 years. And that is good for the economy of, and then you are also getting storage, water storage, and then other like water for irrigation, and then electricity. So of course, each and every government have its own agenda, and they have their manifesto, and they have to fulfill that manifesto, and they try to make policies, but as long as that policy is in welfare of the people of the country, so there's no issue. Because in either way, you have to follow the decisions of the cabinets and the government, because they are the decision makers. So not it's not very I don't take it like they interfere. Their interference is required, because it's where you get the direction basically. Because we are the professional, of course we can do analysis, we can make policies, but you need direction from the leadership, from the top leadership. Right now we have a prime minister, like he has very strong focus on environment. So he has given some very good policies on green energy side. He has launched a 10 billion tree plantation scheme in Pakistan. And then we have this 60% share of renewable target in our energy mix electricity vehicle. So these all are good policies. If these are implemented in true letter and spirit, so then there will be no issue. So, but of course, every government has its agenda, and they want to achieve it through different policy measures. Yep.
Sorry, I was on mute. We do not have any further questions from our attendees. Just a final question that came in via the registration forms in advance. So the question is on renewable fuels. How to achieve renewable fuels for automobiles to replace the high CO2 emitting petrol fuels?
So this is basically not we are replacing with the fuel to fuel with the renewables. This is basically we are bringing the electricity vehicles, the hybrid vehicles, to electricity vehicles. So they have the battery system, and they get electricity. They get charging from the charging stations. So what is the concept behind? Because when you are converting your electricity when you are electricity to renewable energy system, when you will have a larger share of renewable in your energy mix, then with the increasing share of transportation on electricity, so you're moving away from fossil fuels. Because if a car is running on a petrol, and if you replace it with a electricity car, so then, and if you are getting that electricity from renewable source, then in that way you are controlling your emissions, and you are getting the fuel replaced with the renewables. So that is not a direct replacement that we can use direct wind or solar in a car engine or something like that. But we use the electricity generated from renewable sources instead of fuel.
Wonderful. Thank you once again. Thank you and for all the questions that have come through in this webinar. I would now like to end this webinar, but before I end, any few last words on the webinar? Faisal, thank you for sending or sharing the link to your video message. If you would like to say something about that.
I think it was really a good experience. This is my first webinar with the CSC, and I'll repeat that really I feel much concerned that the time you people spend on arranging one seminar, and that gave me a more motivation to contribute towards the development of various activities of Commonwealth Commission, and that gave me more motivation to volunteer myself for some community development activities. And then again, I just want to repeat my earlier sentence that we should do our best for the creating an positive impact in our community and societies through knowledge sharing and through other volunteer activities. So that's what I want to say. Rest. So thank you so very much for giving me this opportunity, and it was really a great experience for me to interact with the global scholarship as global CSC community, and great experience, of course.
Thank you. And would you like to say a few words about the video message link that you have just shared in the chat box?
Yeah, yes, thank you so much. Yeah, this is you know that I graduated from Durham University, so they have Durham Energy Institutes. They are very active on research on renewable energy, clean energy transition, and decarbonized heating. So in connection with COP26, they have launched a campaign on decarbonized heating, and they requested me to participate in their campaign. So I recorded a video message for them, and I also given them a written article that how decarbonized heating is important to achieve net zero targets, what's the share of heat in global emissions, what the world world leaders should come up at COP26 for various actions and various decisions based on rationality, and then how Pakistan is meeting its objective, and how Pakistan is moving towards decarbonize its energy sector, and what are the Pakistan policies. So this video message will be exhibited in COP26, 11 November, the day of, I think it's City and Environment Build Day of COP26. So it will be aired from the university's network, COP University's network pavilion on 11th of November. So this is just again a small contribution in a social global social campaigns to give awareness of the for the decarbonized heating, and that is something which I must say that this is the volunteer activities. I was not very much involved in volunteer activities before going to Durham, and after getting before getting scholarship, and after getting back from Durham and through completing my studies through Commonwealth scholarship. So I try to give my input. I try to participate in as many volunteer activity as I can manage, despite of very heavy engagements in office works. But that is something which really gives you satisfaction that you have contributed in some good cause, and that's how we should move forward.
Thank you so much for sharing that information with us, Faisal. I do see in the chat box requests for connecting, our attendees request for connecting with you on LinkedIn. As mentioned, Faisal is more than happy to connect
Yes.
with you if you have any further questions or would like to discuss your work within the same sector that you are studying or conducting research in, or are working in your respective country. So please do get in touch with Faisal on LinkedIn. Faisal, I don't know if you have the link to your LinkedIn profile handy, but as you can
I can,
see,
if you give me just a 1 minute, I can share my
yes,
LinkedIn.
of
Yeah,
course,
please,
yeah, don't worry about it.
please hold.
Yeah. And while you're waiting, or if you have to log out, attendees, you can also see Faisal's name on LinkedIn as seen on the screen. But please feel free to get in touch with him if you have any questions. We would love to, get more information if you do get in touch with our speaker, and perhaps collaborate on a future project or a work together. So do get in touch with him. But thank you so much for attending, and I hope you all have a good rest of the day.
Just
Yes.
I just want to add to all the participants on my that I'll be more than pleased if anyone get connected on LinkedIn. So it will be a great experience for me as well, because all of them have experience in their fields, and some of them are working in energy sector. So that will be good to share experience and knowledge with the community from even from similar or even from different background. So that will be a great learning process. So I think it should be continued. So that's what the Commonwealth provide you, the networking opportunities with the scholarly community from various countries and various backgrounds.